I think the sheer physicality of what they do surprised me.
You can't hold on. I mean, you cannot shoot from that riverine boat and hold a camera.
These things are flying across the water, and you're hanging on with all you've got, and then all of a sudden they do what's called a J-turn, and the boat basically changes direction. And it's a violent turn. I came back beat up, black and blue, but man, it was fun.
That was a really challenging part about videotaping that. We actually had to take those boats down to half speed. I had to be on a slower boat and videotape the maneuverability of the fast boat. Being on the fast boat, trying to videotape the maneuvers and the stopping, forget about it.
The attitude of each and every one of those guys on that unit. They know that what they're doing is really cool. They fight and beat down the doors to get into that unit.
The following segment contains video of burn victims, which may be disturbing to some viewers.
Reflections of Vietnam is the story of the Vietnam conflict, and it's told through the stories of a group of Marine Corps officers who lived through the experience when they joined the military in 1968.
U.S. soldiers in South Vietnam in the battlefield of Vietnam.
And looking at that period of time and trying to tell the Vietnam story, particularly when these Marines went into the service, you really had to talk about what was going on in America because it was such a turbulent time.
Looking back, I think that was before the real media frenzy started.
And we were there, so you don't know the overall picture, you just know the ground in front of you.
You know, we didn't have the type of outside world communications they have now.
I was in a bomb crater with my platoon, and the enemy landed the mortar round.
When I heard that Ron Davidson had been killed and Bill Jones had been killed and John Abbott had been killed, it was a wake-up call for me because I knew that if they could kill those guys, they could kill me too.
We're standing in front of the names of 8 members of TBS Class 568 and in front of the names of thousands of others from that same conflict.
You can't help, regardless of your experience, regardless of your age, being affected when you go down to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. When you look at the names on the wall, you can't help but be affected.
And every name's a father or a husband or a son, or a daughter or a brother or a cousin to someone.
When you have the opportunity to experience it alongside veterans of that conflict, to hear their stories and hear how they're affected by the memorial, it's a whole different experience.
They do the rubbings of their fellow comrades off the wall, and you know, some of them came up to me and said, I promised this guy's wife that I would give this to her. And you know, I just get choked up seeing them do that. And the biggest challenge with capturing an event when you're covering Vietnam veterans at the Vietnam Wall is you want to capture it, but you don't want to stick the camera in their face, and you know they're reliving an emotional experience, and you don't want to come between them and the event, the ceremony, and the memory of their friends.
One of the biggest reasons that we feel it's important to do historical pieces with Recon, like Reflections of Vietnam, is because the military services as they are today, their customs and courtesies, the way they operate, all of that's based on what came before. It's important for everyone to know about the sacrifices made in the past and about the people who made them. Putting a human face on the experience and hearing it straight from people who lived it, I think that is probably the best way people can really learn and appreciate their history.
Battling the Odds was conceived as the story of service members recovering from absolutely unimaginable injuries from which people do not normally recover.
When Daco said, get out, That's when I knew that something was wrong.
I regret to inform you that your son has been injured.
He continued to improve despite overwhelming odds.
We ended up with a case that had been covered by network TV of a soldier who had had a RPG lodged inside his abdomen.
There we go. We're clear. We're clear.
We had a Marine who had been shot in the brain and was turned around and recovered in a perfectly healthy person. And we had another Marine who had been burned over 90% of his body by an IED explosion. He had had more operations, skin graft operations, than anybody in medical history. And 2 years later, he was alive and well and positive.
He was a determined kid that there was nothing that will stand in his way. He had a support of a loving mother that spoke very little English, but had a heart bigger than most of us will ever know.
He was discharged from the hospital. He was living at home with his mother, and he was having another skin operation, but it was, in the context of what he had been through, everybody thought relatively routine and minor, and it was just totally unexpected what happened. He died, totally unexpectedly. And ultimately, we decided to dedicate the show to Merlin German, to let his fight to recover and the spirit with which he conducted that fight be the sort of, in its own way, as uplifting and as positive as the stories of the two who had horrible injuries and are still with us. All these men and women who have these serious injuries have compelling stories, and Merlin German was just exceptionally compelling.
And if we don't do those stories, then, you know, only the hospital staff will know.
It's presenting individual stories in a way that is both this person's story and it's the story of others like them, that makes it meaningful for large groups of people, I think. Somebody's got to do it was just simply a look at dirty jobs in the military, whatever, wherever. And there are many of them, as we learned. We only gave a sampling.
He's got his own decaying smell.
There's only a handful of females that do the job. I guess it's just too dirty for him.
That's nasty.
That's some nasty stuff, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
There are dirtier jobs, I guess. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's definitely a dirty job.
The idea was to, without dead serious, dead earnestness, look at some underappreciated jobs in the military that are grimy and dirty and slimy and are relatively uncelebrated and that are part of the mission that need, whoever does them, somebody has to do them, and that's ergo the title, somebody's got to do it. We started on a Coast Guard buoy tender.
They clean buoys, okay? But what does it take to clean a buoy? You know, how many people ever saw what does it take for guys to clean a buoy? For safety reasons, you cannot be as close as possible because the buoys are big. It's a dirty job. I mean, they bring up dirt and they have to wash it, they have to fix it. It's smelly, it's gooey.
It smells awful.
Too bad we don't have smell-o-vision.
Stagnant, a bit of musty.
Barnacles that they scrape off those buoys are kind of have this pungency that's, you know, it's a little bit fishy, it's a little bit chemical industrially. It has this very distinct smell that you probably wouldn't want to take home with you every day, but these guys do.
First thing she says when I get home is take a shower. So I'm assuming it doesn't go away too well.
Regular people, they love what they do.